What's good? What's happening, Rush Nation? Welcome back to episode 68 of 5 Yard College. Ash is back. His mic is still muted. I'm giving him a heads up. I don't know if he knows. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. Missed him last week. And not only is he back, he's brought cake and beer to the party. Ash, the Dynasty Boys. Liam has a cocktail of the week every week and lets people know. What cake did your nan make for us on your triumphant return this week?
She made just a classic sponge with a bit of jam and cream in the middle. It was delightful, I've got to say.
Nice. Did it have cream on top, or was it just dusted with icing sugar?
No, just dusted. Just a little bit of dust.
Excellent. Is your nan a fan of the Bake Off? Does she watch the Bake Off?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she's fan of bacon. I know that. I don't know if she actually watches the Bake Off or not. Yeah, big fan of the bacon though.
We should get Ash's nan on Bake Off next year, Rush Nation. That should be hashtag get Ash's nan on Bake Off. We'll work on it. Ash, welcome back, mate. Again, last week you were I don't know, Tahiti or somewhere exotic once again, living your best life in 2021. How do you think Jordan and I did last week? Or you can be honest and say you didn't listen. It's fine.
Yeah, I caught about half of it while I was. I caught about 20 minutes while you guys were live, and then I caught about just over half of it through the week, and yeah, it was good. I enjoyed Jordan being on because Pac-12 gets a little bit of love, and they ain't gonna get it when I'm on, so someone's got to.
Yeah, I mean, we went straight through that because you weren't here, and my non-bias to anyone, the Pac-12 was represented by our Pac-12 writer, and I gotta shout out Geordie. Had a baby last Wednesday just after the show, and he's already slamming in reviews and previews of not only the Pac-12 but also the SEC. So I doff my cap to you, George. Well done on that, and congratulations to you and the missus, mate, on the second birth of your second child. No, the first birth, or the birth of your second child. Let's get that right. The second birth would be, I don't know, weird. We'll slide straight away from the Ash. Week 6 in college football. Unbelievable stuff, mate. I mean, we talked earlier on in the day about what we should include in the show doc because there was so much went down. We promised you some showdown talk, Rush Nation. You're probably not going to get it because of how exciting and what there is to cover in week 6. And then I look at the show doc, Ash, I look at the news, and there is only one bit of news in this, which is bananas considering everything that went on this week.
Yeah, there is just the one bit of news. It's all game related, to be honest, game and injury related. But there was one bit of non-game news. It was it came out after the game. But Wisconsin have dismissed running back Jalen Berger from the team. That came about Sunday. The Badgers coach Paul Christ announced the move after the victory over Illinois that Berger's was no longer involved with the program, but they haven't actually specified the reason for his dismissal. And this actually marks the third running back this season, that Wisconsin have released. So obviously Berger went on Sunday yesterday, and we mentioned it, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago now, maybe a bit longer. But freshman Loyal Crawford was dismissed, and fellow freshman Anton Roberts, was suspended. Roberts has since entered the transfer portal, so they've lost three running backs this year. So that back room is looking a little scarce. But be interested to see what the decision to release Berger was, because he was a highly rated player coming into Wisconsin, and he was their top rusher last year in his freshman year. So clearly something's gone on behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always think of Wisconsin as one of those teams that win it on defense and running the ball behind a stout offensive line, and that just isn't happening this season at all. And now the release of a third running back, something is definitely awry in that room. And as you said, it is very, very scarce right now. I mean, I couldn't even tell you who their lead running back was right now off the top of my head. It's just, it's mad over there. It's absolutely mad. Listen, Ash, I know you're looking that up, and I know that you're keen to tell me the information there. And because there was only one bit of news, we're going to get straight into injury corner. And there is a fair amount of names on the list this week. some fairly big names, some names that injuries may have ramifications, whether or not they are season ending or not. But as always, before we get to Injury Corner, we want to save you from your own injury, and that is by using the Manscaped 4.0. So Ash, do you like playing with balls? No, I'm not talking about footballs. I'm talking about your balls. Our friends at Manscaped, the global leaders in below the waist grooming, want you to shave your pubes with the Trevor Lawrence of ball trimmers. The brand new Lawnmower 4.0 is only the GOAT technology for the greatest college balls of all time. When you're going towards the end zone, make sure you use the right tools for the job and choose Manscaped. 2 million men worldwide trust them, so join the movement with our exclusive offer by using the code 5yard at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code 5yard at manscaped.com. Take your ball defense to the promised land with Manscaped. Ash, Injury Corner. First one straight out the gate. D'Eriq King out for the season after Miami announced he will undergo shoulder surgery. The injury had already caused King to miss the last 2 games, and now his super senior year is over. What does this do for D'Eriq King's draft stock going forward? And just generally for Miami, I mean, the 2 guys who have stepped in so far have looked pretty good, but obviously D'Eriq King was touted as the next big thing. His Heisman race is over now because of this injury as well. Just all around nightmare for Miami. This.
Yeah, it is. As you say, Van Dyke is the guy who stepped in place of him for Miami, and he's performing well. I think he is a redshirt freshman, so for him to be able to step in and play the way he has in that offense is been good. Obviously, it's a massive blow for King. As you said, this is his super senior year. He came back because of the ACL injury that he lost most of the year for. And he's had some really torrid injury luck in college. And this was a big year for him. Even before the season started, he was one of the top guys in school because obviously his experience and how he had performed up to this stage. And the expectation was big, obviously not only for him personally, but for Miami and then for his draft stock and his Heisman. He was in conversation for the Heisman. And the way some of the people around him have performed as well, he would have had an opportunity, and just like that, it's done. 3 games, and his college career is over now. He won't be coming back again. He already redshirted. I think he redshirted his final year at Houston, potentially because of injury again. And I'm not 100% sure if it was because of injury, but he missed a lot of time in Houston, and obviously decided to transfer to Miami. Lost a lot of the last 3 or 4 games of Miami last season, and now he's done again after only 3 games. So his draft stock is really up in the air now. I think you're potentially looking at him as a mid to late round quarterback now because just of that injury history. And it's a shame because the talent is there, and he's shown that in last year. He's shown it in his 3rd year, technically his 2nd year for Houston because he sat out he was a backup for most of his freshman year in Houston. So yeah, it's a real shame. He's a dynamic player, and all the best, obviously, for his recovery. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens to his draft stock now because it could go anyway. People could look at the potential and take a punt on him, but you got to remember 6 years he's been in college now with his redshirt freshman year and this super senior year. He's going to be an older guy going into the NFL draft, an older injury-prone quarterback that has missed a chunk of the last couple of years. It could really go anyway for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Heisman. This weekend was pretty brutal for many of the Heisman contenders. Do you want to talk some Heisman now, or do you want to do it after the injury corner?
Let's get through the injury corner, and then we'll have a little Heisman watch conversation.
Heisman watch. Excellent. I like that. So Michael Penix Jr. is out indefinitely with a shoulder injury after separating it in last week's loss to Penn State. He is listed week to week currently. He did have a bye week to get right, but faces a tough trip at Michigan State next week, who are absolutely humming right now. So not the easiest of games to come back against that Michigan State defense.
No, not at all. And he's another guy. He's had a lot of injury problems, and in his final year, not what he would have wanted. Hopefully, he's not out for too long, but I'd say he's going to be missing a few weeks if it's a separated shoulder. If he has to have surgery, that could be another guy who's done for the year, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Somebody who was hugely on our radar was LSU's Keishon Butte, who was carted off the field in the loss to Kentucky with an apparent ankle injury, which he suffered in a highlight reel catch coming down awkwardly. He is set to miss the remainder of the season following the injury. This is massive news for Keishon Butte and LSU, respectively.
Yeah, definitely. He was having a fantastic season following on from his freshman year last year. He's all the reports saying he's done for the year. It came out a couple of hours ago. Obviously, the injury happened on Saturday, but it was reported a couple of hours ago that he's going to miss the remainder of the year, and that's a massive blow for an LSU team that were already struggling 3-3 on the year. Region is looking in trouble. This is a long way from that national championship team that we saw in 2019. I think I saw earlier that he's 8-8 since that national title. Surely it's only a matter of time before he's out the door if things don't drastically improve. But they just don't look good. And now that losing their top wide receiver, they're in a whole world of hurt at the moment.
Yeah, you hit the nail completely square on the head there. Orgeron's job it's only a matter of time now, if you ask me. They've lost Butte, and I think the next bit of news is that Derek Stingley is also out indefinitely after undergoing foot surgery, which he injured in practice at the end of September. He's missed the last 2 games, but I'm fairly sure that this is the last time we see Derek Stingley now. I think this is it to the end of the season, then he declares and joins the NFL. So not only have they lost their star wide receiver, they're now lost possibly the best corner in the league at the moment. So tough times for LSU.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's be honest, Stingley's not got anything more to prove from his personal resume. I can't see him coming back and risking his health when he's got the draft to look forward to. And obviously, this injury might derail it slightly. I think he's still locked in as a first round, but maybe the top 5 expectation that people had for him, it might be a reach now, depending on what this foot injury is and how long he's out for. But yeah, I mean, he should still be a lock as one of the top cornerbacks in the draft next year.
It could be a Caleb Farley situation all over again with his missed year and last year at Vartech, and then obviously he fell down the draft board to the Cowboys. Did he get drafted by the Cowboys?
I can't remember. No, Titans, wasn't it? Caleb Farley.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Actually, either way,
yeah, Titans.
Has he taken to the field this season, or is he still?
Let's have a look. I am on him now. Yes, he has played. He's made 2 tackles and 1 pass defended. The game on Sunday, yesterday, was his first appearance against Jacksonville.
I don't imagine he was named a starter with only 2 tackles and 1 pass defended either. So
I can't imagine so.
It could well be a Farley situation for Stingley, which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, because as we've seen, if you pick up an injury but tend to turn out okay, you fall on the draft in the first round, you tend to go to a decent first team rather than somebody who's got an early pick. So it could work out for Derek Stingley there. Texas A&M quarterback Haynes King is unlikely to return this year after fracturing his ankle in week 2 of the season. It was expected that King would be out till mid to late October. However, that is already looking unlikely. And with Zach Calzada doing what he did at the weekend, who knows? Although it was a tough one, because that week 1 game, where Haynes King exited, he hadn't exactly lit it up. And it was, as we've mentioned, it was a quarterback battle right until game 1 of the season. So
yeah. And to be fair, up until this weekend, Calzada also wasn't looking great. So it's a blow for him personally, for Haynes King. But as you say, it was a close battle, and he's done for the year. But he's a freshman. So he's got plenty of time to recover and come back if he can win the job back from Calzada. Because I think Calzada's a sophomore, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Just going to pull into speculation station here, Ash, and how about, this is why Zach Calzada played well this week, because he knew finally that King wasn't going to be challenging for his job again.
I mean, it's not a bad shout, but I mean, you'd have thought if King was breathing, like if King was still there breathing down his neck, you'd have thought he would have probably put it on in the last couple of games. But I like it. I like the thought process. I'm not on board though. I'm getting off the train.
everything I've heard to today and watched from the highlight reel, Texas A&M did a whole bunch of stuff that they hadn't done all season when playing Alabama this week, and just shell shocked them. But it's yeah. Imagine if that was true. That would be a catch and reel thing for me right there. Moving on, another quarterback, Penn State, Sean Clifford. He was injured in the second quarter of the loss to Iowa on Saturday. Did not return after he took a monster hit. We've seen with his arm in a wrap. The guy coming in, whose name I cannot remember. I thought I'll remember this name. It's the backup at Penn State.
Quan Robertson.
Yes, I thought that name. I'll remember that because it's unusual, and there I am, blank as always on the podcast. But I mean, you've got the guy down at is it Kentucky? Willis? Did he leave Penn State to take on the starting role at Kentucky?
Can't remember off the top of my head.
I think he did. And yeah, that's one of those things that's proven this week is having a secondary quarterback is massively important. And now with name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal being used mid-season, if you're not getting a starting gig and you want to go start, you just jump ship. And
Will Levis is who you're on about. Sorry, yeah.
I said Willis, didn't I?
Yeah. Sorry,
it's one and the same. Yeah, Will Levis. He is currently balling out at the undefeated Kentucky Wildcats, and Penn State. Are they now thinking, we should have tried harder but it's the player's prerogative to find somewhere to play, and we've seen it at Wisconsin, and we've seen it at Oklahoma this week. They knew what they wanted, and in calling for Rattler to be benched, and this week it turned out to be true. And do we see Spencer Rattler jump ship now? I mean, we're diving all over the place, and we haven't touched on Sean Clifford at all here, but
it'd be interesting to see how long Clifford's out for, and we'll get into it in the results. But that massively affected Penn State in the game when he left. So
yeah, tricky one. Oregon running back CJ Vidal is out for the rest of the season after the left leg injury he suffered in last week's loss to Stanford. That is a huge blow for Oregon and Jord. I mean, Jord has now lost the Oregon running back in Vidal, and also Keishon Butte in the showdown. So that 5-0, that 5-1 now start. Jord is looking pretty cagey, mate. You're lucky I lost this week. I mean, props to Tommy. He beat me on a poor week. So you got to win your battles. And then finally, Maryland wide receiver Dante Demas Jr. is also done for the season with a knee injury. Demas will undergo surgery for the injury, but we are yet to hear if it was an ACL or not. So that's bad news for the Terrapins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
AP rankings time, Ash. I'll tell you what, before we get to the rankings, let's do a little bit of Heisman talk.
Okay.
We saw loads of people dive out of the rankings this week. De'Eric King, as mentioned. Several other people whose names have escaped me right now. But then you've got the likes of players, Ohio State's quarterback CJ Stroud, who's, if you want to go get him now, I don't know if this is true, but as of this morning, he was 15-1 to win the Heisman. And when you're looking around, is there another quarterback you fancy more than CJ Stroud right now? Bryce Young? I don't know.
At the minute, Stroud is third favourite, so Bryce Young is still narrowly favourite in the overalls. Matt Corral is second, who is my current pick. I pick him over Young as the Heisman. Then you've got Stroud who's in third, and then Kenneth Walker, the running back from Michigan State, is actually fourth favourite at the moment. He's having a blistering season, and he racked up 200 plus yards again this weekend. So he jumped right up in the odds. And then, of course, you've got the freshman Trayvon Henderson from Ohio State, Bijan Robinson. A lot of running backs this year. It'd be nice to see another year without a quarterback. Obviously, we had Devonta Smith last year as the wide receiver. It'd be nice to get another running back as the Heisman. I think Derrick Henry was the last one to win it. So
correct.
Could we see another running back win the Heisman? But I'd say those three quarterbacks as it stands at the moment, and you've got to include Ridder in that conversation as well, actually. How can I forget him? those three quarterbacks are probably still the favourites and will remain the favourites for the rest of the year. What I find very interesting is Rattler and JT Daniels are still. I know Rattler is definitely still in the top 10 in the Heisman odds, and I think JT Daniels is still hanging around. He has dropped off significantly, but I think he's still hanging around in relatively decent odds when you look at it as a comparison. But we're already narrowing it down now realistically to, I'd say maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Howell's gone, DJ's gone, Rattler's gone, but he's still hanging around. There's just so many players. I mean, Kenneth Walker, he broke off the longest play in Michigan State history, 94 yards, I think.
Took my thing from later when we talk about the game. Thanks very much.
Soz, mate.
That's right. That was one. I got 2 for the Michigan State game, so you're all right. I'll let you off.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I really like CJ Stroud. I think the thing with Bryce Young is with Alabama getting beat, it's not necessarily that they got beat, but they showed this is the second game this season that they looked vulnerable. Both were on the road, and I think with just how good CJ Stroud's playing, yes, they've lost as well, but he threw for was it 3 touchdowns and over 5 touchdowns? Yeah. No, I mean again in the Oregon game he threw.
Sorry, yeah, 3. I thought you meant this weekend. Yeah,
but it was nearly 500 yards I think in the Oregon game and 3 touchdowns. So that in itself's no shame. And then Matt Corral, yes, he's got to be up there, but Ole Miss lost to Bama last weekend or the weekend before now, and then Bama lose. So
yeah,
and so Ole Miss should have probably got closer against Bama when you consider what a Texas A&M team who up until this week looked bang average did to Bama. And yes, it was shell shock, but CJ Stroud for me, I don't know if he is still 15-1, but if you can't,
it's dropped a bit now, but
on Sky Bet you can't back Heisman winners anymore. They've taken the market away. So
boring. I'm just having a look at the schedules remaining for those 3 in particular. So Bama have still got Miss State, Tennessee, LSU, New Mexico. Still got a game against Arkansas and Auburn to finish the year out. So it is Bama. This week was a shock. Are we going to see him drop another game? I don't think so, but there's some difficult games in that schedule. Mississippi, Ole Miss have still got Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, Liberty, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. So again, there are some tough fixtures in that one. And then, I mean, to be fair, actually, Ohio State could have the most difficult schedule remaining looking at it. Indiana next week, who are no pushovers despite the fact they're not having the best year. Penn State the following week. Nebraska and Purdue should be gimmies, but they finished the year against Michigan State and Michigan. So all 3 of them have some tough games remaining on their schedule. And I think if Stroud can continue to if Stroud can continue to put up those numbers that he has done against those teams, you're probably going to see him get to be the favorite. If he can pull off against that Penn State defense, against that Michigan State defense, and the way they've been playing, Indiana have got a good defense. Michigan, they had an interesting week, but still won, and they're having a good year. Yeah, he could well be in with a really, really good shout, more so than 3rd favorite. It could be his to lose.
I think the Penn State quarterback conundrum as of right now is hugely important for that Ohio State game because I think the Buckeyes defense is good enough to overwhelm their second string quarterback at Penn State, and then CJ Stroud won't have to be the hero of the day in that one. And then last game against Michigan, it could be a point where they're going there with only 1 loss, and Michigan's run-in is brutal. So that game could almost mean nothing by then.
So looking at the latest odds as of this present moment, Corral and Young are both tied at 2-1, and then CJ Stroud is at 6-1 now. So he has narrowed it down. I'm not surprised Corral is now equal favourite with how he played this weekend and how Alabama lost. Bryce Young wasn't terrible in that game, but he wasn't exceptional. And then you've got Kenneth Walker, who's 4th favourite at 16-1, and Ridder tied with him at 16-1. So yeah, interesting. Should be a good Heisman year once again, as it always is, of course.
I think it's going to be a good year for college football as a whole, Ash, the way it's started so far. I mean,
Definitely
what a year to,
unpredictable.
yeah, what a year to jump into the hot seat with your good self. The AP rankings, Ash, I've got the hang of this now. We start at 25, we do 5 each. Do you want to go first or second?
I will go first. So at 25 is the Texas Longhorns, 24 San Diego State, 23 SMU, 22 NC State, and at 21 Texas A&M, who are back in the rankings after, of course, beating Bama that we mentioned earlier. So there's no real surprises for me in this one. I think Texas have hung on to their rankings after that game that we'll get into a bit more details later against Oklahoma. But I think, what are they, 4-2 now? Have they dropped 2 games?
Yeah, because they lost to Texas
They
Tech
lost to,
or
they lost
Texas A&M.
they lost
Arkansas.
Arkansas. They lost to Arkansas.
I knew
So
I'd
I
get there.
mean, yeah, you could probably still. There probably still should be in there. I'm just trying to see who is just on the outside. I mean, Auburn, Clemson, Baylor. Would you put any of those ahead of them? Who are closest to them? Probably not. Maybe Auburn is probably the closest for me. It could be a toss up between Texas and Auburn at the moment of who gets 25. But
I mean,
it's not.
Baylor are playing well.
Baylor are playing well. Yeah, Baylor are playing well. But I think you've got to take into account the conference that they're in is not, again, overly competitive this year on the face of it, outside of a couple of teams. So yeah, I would still probably put them as the 4th best if you look at who's in the rankings and who's just missing out. I think, but Auburn, Baylor, and possibly Clemson are the 3 that you could say maybe should be there with or above Texas. Texas A&M, are they up there because of the victory?
Yes.
Yes,
That's
definitely.
the only
Because
reason they're
again,
there.
they're another 4-2 team, and there's a couple of teams undefeated below them that you could probably argue should be ahead of them. But I mean, they beat Alabama. They beat the number 1 team this weekend. You can't take much away from them.
Yeah, that's going to do a whole lot for your ranking right there on itself. Right at 20, we've got Florida, 19 BYU, who slide after their loss, 18 Arizona State, 17 Arkansas, and 16 Wake Forest, who continue to be unbeaten in the ACC and general football life. I didn't get Arkansas wrong, Ash. I got it right.
You did, yeah.
I mean, this list, these 5, I think it's
I think BYU are very fortunate. I know they were 10. This is their first loss of the year. I think they're fortunate to still be in the top 20, to be honest with you. But they did not look good at all against Boise, which, I mean, Boise haven't looked fantastic this year. It was a great game, but I think they're fortunate to be where they are. And I think because of how well they started the year has done them a favour as to keeping them where they are. I can't really argue with any of the others. Again, Arkansas have got 2 losses on their schedule now. However, the way they've played up until the last 2 games, you could probably argue that they should still be there.
Yeah.
Wake Forest, fantastic. That is beyond any expectation I had for them to be to be 6-0. To be undefeated 6 games into the year for Wake Forest is a great achievement in itself. And I mean, they don't look like they're letting up at all. So I mean, we got they're a dark horse at the moment for the. I mean, not even a dark horse at the moment. They've got to be favourite, haven't they, for the ACC based on what's around them? Are they not the highest ranked, or are they the only ACC team? No, sorry, North NC State are in there as well, but their highest ranked ACC team left in there. I mean, they are, as it stands, the best team in the ACC, which is crazy to think.
Yeah. And if you go and look at Wake Forest's schedule, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think between now and their next 3 games, they're not the hardest of games for Wake. So I think they could possibly be 9-0 before their first test.
Army next week. Bye week this week. Army following week. Wake Duke at the end of October, and then they've got North Carolina. So yeah, I mean, then they've got 3 tough games: NC State, Clemson, and Boston College. So big game, that NC State and the Clemson game. But as you say, they could easily be 9-0 by that point, because I mean, North Carolina haven't looked great, have they? So
No.
you should at the moment expect them to be able to see themselves through that game.
And I think
But
if they can win one of those three after that as well, you're looking, 11-1's an unbelievable record for Wake this year.
yeah, definitely crazy. If that happens, I mean, that'll be beyond all expectations. On to 15 to 11. At 15 is Coastal Carolina, who continue to remain undefeated. 14 is Notre Dame. 13 is the aforementioned Ole Miss, who we discussed earlier. At 12 is Oklahoma State, who remain perfect at 5-0. And at 11 is Kentucky, who oversaw LSU this weekend and also remain perfect at 6-0. So, again, Kentucky, another team you've got to watch out for in the SEC. And you've obviously got the likes of Bama and Georgia who are fighting out for the top team in the SEC. I think at this point, we know who the top team is. But yeah, Kentucky are right there with Ole Miss and Ole Miss and Arkansas at the moment. It's going to be a very interesting fight for the SEC. The SEC title outside of those two teams. One of these teams could easily get in if Bama slip another game, which I mean, it's probably unlikely, but not completely unrealistic. One of these teams could quite easily go, yeah, cool, we'll take that. I think Kentucky are in the same conference as Georgia, so unless they play each other, which they do this week, they play each other. Wow, cool! They play each other this week. Can you imagine if Kentucky beat Georgia this week? That would be absolutely madness. So, I mean, I can't see it, but we've got to give them some credit. They're 6-0 for a reason. So,
and their last two wins have been Florida, and then this week they beat LSU. So
yeah, exactly. They're beating teams.
Yeah, I mean LSU aren't ranked right now, but Florida are 20th. But those are the big scalps for a Kentucky side, and then if they can run Georgia close, I mean, even if they run Georgia close next week, but other teams above them and around them lose as well, they could rise on performance alone from just that result.
Yeah, definitely. They could easily rise if they have a good game. I mean, in the actual SEC title point of view, they would need to beat Georgia to be able to get to the title game because obviously they're in the same conference. But I mean, the SEC West is wide open with that Bama loss now. Bama obviously still remain top at 5-1, but Ole Miss are at 4-1, and then you've got a handful of teams who are at 4 wins and 2 losses. So yeah, SEC West in particular could be very interesting.
So at 10 we got Michigan State, at 9 is Oregon, 8 is Michigan, 7 Penn State, and then at 6 the Buckeyes. Ash, any of these? So the Big Ten has got a representation here. Between 6 and 8 with Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan.
Yeah.
Do you think that Michigan are below perhaps where they should be because they are undefeated?
Michigan or Michigan State?
Michigan. Or have Michigan lost?
No, Michigan haven't lost, but they were poor this weekend. I'm surprised to see them above Michigan State.
Are you? Okay.
I would flip those two. I would probably still say at this moment they should both be top 10. You could probably argue Kentucky. I would personally have Michigan State at 8 and maybe Kentucky above Michigan. Michigan didn't look great this weekend against Nebraska. They just squeaked past that Nebraska team who have looked poor for a lot of the year, but they are still undefeated. I think so. They are deservedly in and around where they should be. Personally, I would have them just outside the top 10 based on that one performance. Up until that point, you've got to give them credit. They've looked good. I mean, the Rutgers game a couple of weeks ago, 2013, Rutgers have had a good defense this year so far, but you would still expect them to put more than 20 points up against that Rutgers team. But apart from that, they've looked pretty good. They saw over Wisconsin quite comfortably last week, so they are there or thereabouts where they should be. I think Michigan State can feel a bit unfortunate to be where they are because they've looked fantastic. Again, is it because of the teams that they've been facing? Potentially. They played Rutgers this week and saw it off them quite easily. Western Kentucky, but they've beat Miami. They've beat Northwestern, who are having a torrid year, but they beat Northwestern to open the year and Northwestern were a team that we were expecting the big things from. But they've got a couple of easy games on their schedule, so that's probably why they are at 10 and not higher. What I love, though, is that there's 5 Big Ten teams in there, and it's the first time in AP history since 1936, when it first started, that there's been 5 teams from the Big Ten in the top 10. So they're getting the representation, which is good to see. And I think from a Big Ten standpoint overall, it's another conference where one of the divisions is wide open. Big Ten West is Iowa's to lose. They are perfect. The teams around them are not great. You've got Minnesota and Purdue who are next nearest, and they're both at 3-2. Iowa have locked up the Big Ten West. They're going to be at the title game, barring an absolute catastrophe. Big Ten East is as wide open as it could be. You've got the perfect Michigan and Michigan State at 6-0. You've got Ohio State at 5-1. You've got Penn State at 5-1, and you've even got Maryland, who are still sat at 4-2 and are in for a shout because all those teams above them are playing each other, and Maryland are playing some of those teams as well. And you've got Indiana, who are at 2-3. Very unlikely, but they're still knocking on the door with the amount of games that are left if things go their way. So Big Ten East is wide open. Any one of these teams could win it.
I can't argue. I can't argue with any of that. I was trying to come up with a rebuttal there, but I had nothing. I mean, excuse me. We'll get on to. Are you doing the top 5?
Yes, mate.
Okay, let's have the top 5 because obviously the first one's a bit of a shocker.
The first one, is a shocker. Bama have come in at number 5 with a 5-1 record after that loss this weekend to Texas A&M. At 4 is Oklahoma State, who got that big comeback victory in the Red River rivalry.
Oklahoma.
At 3, I'm loving this. Cincinnati are at number 3 with their perfect start to the year. I mentioned it before I went off 2 weeks ago that they should have been in the top 4 then. I am so happy to see them in the top 4 now. At 2 is Iowa, who, again, we mentioned earlier, look for a lock for the Big Ten West and more than deserve, in my opinion, to be sat at number 2. And at number 1, the new number 1 ranked team in the country is Georgia with their perfect 6-0. And I find it interesting that 1 and 2 have the first and second best defenses in the league, in the country at the moment. I think that says a lot about the state of play of college football at the moment. The top 2 defenses are 1 and 2.
It's because defenses have been allowed to play defense in practice before the season. We saw it last year. There was absolutely no contact in practice because of COVID, and defenses couldn't get a handle on the game. Mm-hmm. This season, practice makes perfect. And as you said, the best 2 defenses are at the top, and it's because good defenses in college football win football matches. And the way Iowa especially are playing on defense is unbelievable. Their turnover ratio is frightening. Their field position when starting drives is absolutely horrendous for the opposition because of how well they're playing. And I still want Georgia's defense over Iowa, but like you said, those two are fire right now. And Cincinnati, if you'd have said this top 4 at the start of the season, we're missing Clemson, we're missing the Buckeyes, we're missing Bama from the top 4. Only Georgia would have been in the top 4. And of those teams I mentioned, there's no way you've got Georgia at 1. Absolutely no way you've got Georgia at 1. And Ash, I'm going to steal a stat from you here. It is the first time since 2008 that Georgia have been the number 1 in the poll. It's also the 16th time overall at the number 1 position. And the first time they have been the unanimous number 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's bananas that it's the first time.
Yeah, that's the craziest one for me, that they've never been the unanimous number 1, which basically means they've been ranked 1, but they've been tied with the team in second for the amount of votes that they received. That's crazy. A team like Georgia have never been the unanimous number 1. Yeah, right. They fully deserve to be there. They have been lights out every single week. Even when they take their foot off the gas, they still look like they could take on anybody. I wish we would. We're probably going to see it in the SEC title match, but I wish Georgia and Alabama were playing in the regular season. That would be incredible. We're probably going to see it in the SEC title game though, so hopefully we still get to see that this year. But Georgia have got an interesting couple of games. I fully expect them to come through both of them, but they face Kentucky this weekend, which is a massive game for that conference and that division. They then have Florida to close out October. And then the end of the year, it gets a little bit easier for them. They've got Missouri, Tennessee, Charleston, and Georgia Tech. So realistically, they get through these two games unscathed, they could well have a perfect record, and they probably should have a perfect record. I can imagine we're going to be looking back at this week and see it. Sorry, this in 6 weeks' time, seeing Georgia at the top with a 12-0 record. That would be very. I think if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Kentucky next week. But we said that about Arkansas 2 weeks ago, and Georgia shut them out 37-0. So, yeah.
I've learned my lesson very clearly there, Georgia. I apologise. Tom, go Dogs. Ash, you mentioned records. A number of records were broken this weekend.
Yeah, and they all relate to Bama, who had a number of their streaks broken, and probably no Bama fan wants to hear any of these, but the loss to Texas A&M not only put them down to 5th and outside of the playoffs, but it's the first time in 100 wins that they won 100. They had 100 wins in a row against unranked oppositions before the loss to Texas A&M. They also lost their 19 straight victories, which the last time they lost was against Auburn in November 2019. And also Nick Saban lost his perfect record against his former assistants. He was 24-0 before the game against Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. His 25th game against an assistant, and he has finally lost one.
It's just all of those absolutely bananas numbers.
Crazy, aren't they?
It's just mind-boggling how those numbers can get so big, especially when the amount of people in college football have been in the Saban coaching tree and stuff. It's
just shows how dominant they've been for the last decade, though, hasn't it? I think he's been in charge since 2007. So, yeah, over a decade. I think it's 2007 he took over them. So, yeah, over a decade of dominance almost from them now. And have we seen the end of it? Probably not. I mean, yes, they slipped up. Yes, they slipped up against Texas A&M, but it was still a great game, and they were still putting points up on the board, and they still have some fantastic talent, not only starting but waiting to come out. They're still going to be in this conversation. I wouldn't be surprised to see them back in the top 4 by the end of the year, because Iowa, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma, one of those teams could easily drop a game. One of those teams lose their perfect record. Alabama are right back in the top 4 without a shadow of a doubt. No one's jumping over them if they don't lose another game and one of those teams lose above them.
Yeah, and there's pressure looking down. That's
yeah.
Those teams above. Right, Ash, we've got a whole load of ball to talk about. Not a lot of time to do it in. Let's dive through some results. And do you think we should run through these real quick and then talk about the 4 games that we've highlighted just because they were so good?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds good to me.
Okay, start with the ACC as always. Georgia Tech beat Duke 31-27. Virginia won a close one against Louisville 34-33. Florida State got an upset win against North Carolina 35-25. Wake, as we mentioned, stay unbeaten in a 40-37 win over Syracuse. And my Virginia Tech Hokies lost a close one to Notre Dame 32-29 in a game they could have won.
Yeah, I think Virginia can feel real unfortunate to be walking away from that game as the losers. It was a very close game, and another game that Notre Dame have taken it right up to the edge. I mean, I think if we look at their results this year, they won like most of their. I think they've won or lost almost all of their games by, I want to say, by a score. I think Purdue last week was by a couple. So, okay. They lost to Cincinnati. Yeah, no. So they lost by 3 points this week. They lost by 11 points last week to Cincinnati. They dominated Wisconsin. They won by 2 scores against Purdue. They only beat Toledo by 3 points, and they only beat Florida State by 3 points. So 3 of their 6 games this year, they've won by 3 points. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Considering how Notre Dame were last year, to see them, I wouldn't say struggle because they still won all those games. They've ground them out, but to see them not be as dominant as they were last year against these teams is so surprising.
Yep.
I mean, we've got to talk about Wake Forest. Not Wake Forest, sorry, we've already spoken about Florida State and North Carolina. What has happened to North Carolina? I
Oh
mean,
God,
we
it's
were
like you think about North Carolina and how many seniors they returned on their offensive line, and that was how they were going to dominate the ACC, and it's just been the complete opposite.
that that offensive line is horrendous. We
Mm-hmm.
were obviously concerned about the weapons that Howell had around him. I think he's done a good job with what he's had around him. Ty Chandler is the running back. He's done all right, but he's nothing special. Josh Downs looks a great talent. I like Josh Downs a lot, but outside of him as the wide receiver, there's a spurt. There's a few players. There's no one that jumps out on the page of you. There's no one that you can rely on week in, week out. And I think Sam Howell has still put up decent numbers considering that offensive line that's in front of him. He gets no time. He gets hit far too much. We've gone through it plenty of times already this year. He must be hurting every single game.
Yeah.
Like absolute agony. You can tell as well. I think the expectation for him this year was so high. I think he was going to falter no matter what. He had his best pass rating last year at I think like 68 or 69%, which was up about 7% from his first year in under center with North Carolina. That was always expected to drop. I wouldn't have expected it to drop to 60%, which he's at the moment. But it's all to do, in my opinion, it's to do with this offensive line. He's made some mistakes. Some of his decision makings have not been the best, but I think he's just getting no time to make a decision. He's having to react on the fly and under pressure. And I think considering how they've played in front of him, I think he's doing a okay job for a team that is underperforming. And their defense is in an absolute shambles. Like they haven't looked good at all this year, in my opinion, barring last week when they played Duke. And come on, it's Duke. There's no expectation in that game. So yeah, I can't believe the drop off. They were ranked 10th coming into the year, and there was a real big expectation on them, and they have fallen flat on their face, more so than people had expected, considering what they'd lost.
Did you see what Mac Brown said in his interview after the game?
I haven't. No, what did he say?
So he basically came out and said that the media got it all wrong. He said you were expecting us to be a top 10 team, and we're not that good. You know, it was all you that got that wrong, and basically said that the team, it didn't try and get behind the team by the sounds of it. He just said that we're not good enough and you guys are wrong. It's not us who's wrong. The media got it wrong. And it's like, I'm not sure, Mac. I'm not sure.
If they'd have been perfect on the year and ranked 4 or 5 in playoff contention, he would have had the absolute opposite reaction, wouldn't he? He would go, "Oh, you only put us 10, and the way we played last year and what we had and what we've got now, blah blah blah." It's all coach talk. They're all going to do it. Come on,
Yeah.
you're going to, aren't you? So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear him say that. Should we move on to the Big Ten?
Let's do it.
Starting off with Ohio State, they beat Maryland 66-17. CJ Stroud put up the 5 touchdowns that we mentioned earlier. Trayvon Henderson is looking, just so good in his freshman year. His true freshman, and you can see why he was the ranked number 1 running back coming in from high school, and it just gets better and better every week. Master T's getting the scraps at the end of the game. I think he had 4 touches this week, and that's with Mayan Williams out hurt. Once Mayan Williams is back in, Master T's a non-factor. I think you'll probably see Henderson maybe drop a few touches. I think Mayan Williams will come back in and get a little bit of work. But this is Henderson's back room now. He owns this back room, barring an injury, I'd say. That's the only way he's going to lose this back room. Michigan State, who we mentioned earlier, beat Rutgers 31-13. Wisconsin held Illinois to a shutout, beating them 24-0. Iowa State beat Penn State 23-20. That was the third and fourth ranked teams of last week up against each other. And Michigan, who we mentioned earlier, narrowly beat out Nebraska 32-29. Now, one of these games is in our game of the week, so we won't get into that one yet. We've briefly discussed Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State. So is there anything else you want to talk about in the Big Ten? Because I could talk about Ohio State all night, and you know that. But I don't want to. But all I'll say is, yeah, what we said, CJ Stroud, unbelievable.
Yeah,
Got the two best wide receivers in the league, and you know my love for Trayvon Henderson. So
I think it's just right now though. I think that if they'd have beaten Oregon in that loss, then we'd have been talking. I think Ohio State would be one now ahead of Georgia just because of the numbers they've put up.
yeah, I would say so as well. But not only because of the numbers they've put up, but I think the fact that where they were ranked to start the year, unless a team loses like Bama have and like Ohio did early on, you won't see them drop below a team that was ranked below them if they're both undefeated. It rarely happens. So yeah, you're right. They're going to be kicking themselves even more for that Oregon game, but they were so poor on defense. And I'll be honest with you, their defense still doesn't look great. I watched the Maryland game, and there's still times where they're so that they're just some of the. I wouldn't say they seem lost, but they're just they lose coverages. There's far too many gaps in the backfield. Secondary is our problem. Secondary was our problem last year, and it seems to be the same again this year. I do worry if we make it to the playoffs, are we going to have a one and done game? Probably, if we're not careful. But at the moment, that is all defenses in the top, and then Desmond Ridder. So maybe not. We'll have to wait and see.
I mean, the only other thing for those 5 games is Wisconsin holding Illinois to scoreless. Although then you look at some of the metrics, Wisconsin are top 5, top 3 in quite a lot of the defensive metrics across the board this year. So that's no surprise. But how badly they've been playing recent to hold Illinois. I mean, Illinois aren't a firepower team, but
still held them to under 100 yards, which to do that to any college team is no mean feat. And Graham Mertz didn't look good on the day, but he's still hurt. We weren't sure if we were going to see him in the game at all anyway, and you could tell watching him that he was playing hurt. What I will say, though, is we mentioned about Jalen Berger and the other lads who have been released from the program. I just looked at the Wisconsin running stats. They still had 2 guys who put up over 100 yards rushing each. They had what's his name? They had Braylon Allen, who put up 131 yards and a touchdown, and Ches Malusi, who put up 145 yards and a touchdown. So good job that Mertz. Well, I wouldn't say good job, but Mertz had a little rest basically in this game. Let's just give it to the running backs. Let them run the ball. Mertz can throw it every so often, and we'll give him a rest, but we'll still play him. So that seems to be what happened in that game.
Yeah, there's only 3 games to talk of in the Big 12 this week. We'll get to one of them in a little bit. That is the Oklahoma-Texas game. West Virginia got hammered 45-20 by Baylor. The West Virginia team, after a good game in the week 1, then they got a couple of wins. West Virginia have lost 3 on the bounce now, I think, in all sorts of bother. So not a good start for the Mountaineers there. TCU beat Texas Tech 52-31 in the 3rd game in the Big 12, and that's a big win for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think TCU are another team that I had a bit more of expectation for coming into the year, and they've sort of left a little bit to be desired. I think they're 3-2 on the year. They've had some close run games, but they just seem to have been missing something, and they turned it on this week against Texas Tech, and it was good to see. I think the two games they lost this year. Obviously, last week they lost to Texas in that 32-27 game. That was a great game to watch. And then the week before is probably the one for them that they'd be a bit disappointed in, the loss to SMU. But again, SMU ranked, unbeaten. That's 2 tough losses. That's 2 tough games to come through. They've got Oklahoma this week. That's a massive game for them. I can't see them winning it. But what I will say is, I think Max Duggan we need to see more from him. Basically, I think last year he looked great, and this year, yeah, just seems to be a step off at times. And also, what's their running back called? Zach Evans, the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
I think people expected a lot from him coming into the year, and at the moment, the offense does seem to be running through him and running through their run game as a whole. I think they had another running back this week that got nearly 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, with Zach Evans getting 2 touchdowns and 140 odd yards. So they're a run-first offense at the moment. Baylor, though, that their quarterback Jerry Bohannon, I think is his name. He looked phenomenal this weekend. He looked great, and he's had a great year. And you mentioned them earlier; they can maybe feel a bit hard done by for not being ranked. And to be honest, you're probably right. They've played. I'm just trying to bring up their schedule to see who they've played. Obviously, they saw off West Virginia this week, who as you say, started the year well, but have fallen off quite considerably since then. But they've beaten. I mean, they beat Iowa State 2 weeks ago. They narrowly lost to Oklahoma State last week. That Oklahoma State game could well be a massive kicker for them come the end of the year. That could be the one they look back at and go, yeah, if we'd have won that game, it could have been different. But they've still got BYU to play this week, Texas to play the week after, TCU, Oklahoma. Yeah, Baylor have done good. Have done well to get these 5 wins under their belt now, because this next 4 weeks is going to be the make or break for them and their Big 12 title aspirations.
Absolutely.
So Pac-12, only the 4 games in the Pac-12 this week. First one, Oregon State faced up against Washington State. Washington State won this one 31-24. Utah went into Los Angeles and I believe beat USC at their home ground for the first time ever, I want to say. First time they've ever won in Los Angeles, 42-26. UCLA beat, wow, my voice went well weird then. UCLA beat Arizona 34-16. And the final game in the Pac-12, Arizona State beat Stanford 28-10, which is a surprising result considering Stanford only put one over on Oregon a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, that Utah USC game, I'm just quickly trying to find. I'm pretty sure I read earlier that this is the first time that they've won in Los Angeles, either ever or in, I don't know, like
very long time.
A really long time. I swear I seen it somewhere. I'm positive that it happened. Talk while I have a look.
Well, they changed their quarterback, didn't they, Utah? They got the new guy in.
Brewer left last week, didn't he? And
Charlie Brewer left.
Cameron Rising is the new quarterback, and
Rising.
Yeah, he had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns this week. He looked great against USC. Let's have a look.
And with the USC game, it is Drake London, and that's it. You know.
Oh, Drake London.
He's unbelievable, but he can't do it on his own. I mean,
I knew. Go on, sorry, carry on.
No, carry on.
No, I knew I'd seen it. First win. They've snapped a 106-year winless streak in Los Angeles. They are 0-8, so they've only played in Los Angeles 8 times in 106 years. But they snapped a 106-year winless streak in Los Angeles. So there we go. I knew I seen it.
That's every 12 years they play each other. Yeah,
and it was quite a heartfelt game for them as well. Because obviously this is the first game they've played since Aaron Lowe was killed, that we mentioned 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So there was tributes to him and also to Ty Jordan, who died in Christmas last year. There was tributes to both of those guys before the game, and you could tell this meant a lot to them after the game as well.
Absolutely. Stanford, they beat Oregon, but Arizona State are no mugs and
ranked at the moment. You've got to.
James Daniels is making a real case for the NFL next year.
Yeah. In a good year. It's a great time for him to be playing well, considering what's been going on around him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, the SEC. Arkansas, Ash, this cannot be a 52-all draw.
No, it's not. Why have you put that? Why have you put it as 52-all? Come on.
I don't know. I mean, you must have made a terrible mistake.
I didn't make it. You made a mistake.
Arkansas lost 51-52 to Ole Miss. Tennessee put 45 on South Carolina. who scored 20. Tennessee, the Vols are looking good. Hendon Hooker transferring over from Virginia Tech. That is a massive loss because Hooker is balling out right now. Let's hope he continues that next week. I think they've got a massive game against Ole Miss next week. They play Mississippi. It's either Tennessee are playing Mississippi or Mississippi State next week. So
I literally looked at it like 20 minutes ago, and I can't remember. Yeah,
I'm
they're playing.
100.
They're playing Ole Miss. Oh, wow! Tennessee's next 4 games: Ole Miss, away to Bama, away to Kentucky, home to Georgia. Yeah, see you later, Tennessee.
Yeah, but they only need to have a shooter against Ole Miss this week. That'll do me absolutely fine. Florida beat Vanderbilt, as mentioned, 42-0. Georgia beat Auburn 34-10. Is that supposed to be?
No, that's right, 34-10.
Yep, okay. Missouri beat North Texas 48-35. LSU, as we've mentioned, lost to Kentucky 42-21. And then the Alabama-Texas A&M game finished 41-38 in favor of Texas A&M. We're going to talk about that one in a little bit. Group of 5 picks, Ash. Let's run through these quick and get to our
Let's do it. I've got a couple of things after we've done the group of 5, and then we'll get onto them. But the group of 5 games. So, ranked SMU beat Navy 31-24. Cincinnati, third-ranked Cincinnati, beat Temple 52-3. We mentioned it earlier, but Boise State beat ranked BYU 26-17. Liberty and Malik Willis beat Middle Tennessee 41-13. Nevada, who is got my favorite quarterback in college at the moment, Carson Strong, beat New Mexico State 55-28. San Diego State beat New Mexico 31-7. And ranked Coastal Carolina beat Arkansas State 52-20. Now, I don't have any...
Ash, you just, by saying Arkansas, you've reminded me. I looked it up, why it's written Arkansas.
Yeah.
And it said Arkansas. And it's to do with the French inhabitants of it before it was colonized. So, but it's, so people say, well, why doesn't Kansas City get called Consor, not Kansas? But it's because Kansas City has always been part of America, whereas Arkansas was French before being colonized.
Love it. I love when we bring facts onto the podcast, and I love it even more when they aren't football related.
There you go.
Nice. So before we move on to our focus games, I have a few stats that I wrote down, and as we were going through the results, I completely forgot to talk about them. So I'll do the SEC one first because we've only just spoke about them. But Georgia, they have only allowed 2 touchdowns. Their defense has only allowed 2 touchdowns so far this year. That's crazy. We're 6 games into the season, and we know their defense is unbelievable, but 2 touchdowns and some of the teams they've played, mental. My question to you is, does JT Daniels get his job back from Stetson Bennett?
Oh, 100%. 100%, yeah. I just think the way Georgia are playing and the way Stetson Bennett, I mentioned it earlier, having that second quarterback. We saw it last year. Stetson Bennett probably isn't good enough to start a whole season as the starting quarterback at Georgia. And the way they're playing perfectly suits Stetson Bennett's game style, managing the games, let the defense do the work, and wait till JT Daniels is fully healthy. Don't rush him back when you don't need to. Georgia don't need him back right now. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him come back this week. And as we mentioned before, absolutely blow the doors off Kentucky in a game that isn't a contest. So, yeah, I think he gets it back. I just think Kirby Smart's doing it bob on.
Yeah. Stetson Bennett was phenomenal this weekend. But I'd have to agree with you. Yeah, I think the game management from the coaches and from what they've asked of Bennett has been fantastic. And he's done exactly what he needs to do, which is great. Michigan State, you mentioned earlier about Walker scoring the longest touchdown in Spartans history with that 94-yard run, but they also became only the fifth team in FBS history with 300-yard passer, 200-yard rusher, and 200-yard receiver in a single game. Quarterback Peyton Horn threw 340 yards. Kenneth Walker, who we mentioned earlier, rushed for 232 yards and a touchdown. And Jalen Naylor, who is looking phenomenal at the moment at wide receiver, went for 221 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, Michigan State's offense are looking incredible. I'm worried for Ohio State's defense if Michigan State keep generally Peyton Thorne, Kenneth Walker, and Jalen Naylor in particular have looked incredible this season. It's actually worrying. I think they are real dark horses for this Big Ten title with the way they're playing. I would expect them to beat anybody in the Big Ten, barring Iowa. And I would still say Ohio State because of our offense. I think our offense can overcome their offense in a shootout. But apart from that, I think they can overcome Penn State's defense. I think they can beat Michigan. They are looking great, generally. And the other one, I randomly come across it and I had to include it. University of Massachusetts, UMass, broke their 16-game losing streak this week after they beat also winless University of Connecticut, UConn, 27-13.
Yeah.
I mean, those two, we've mentioned UConn far too much on this podcast the last few weeks and just how terrible they've been. But I had to bring them up again because UMass, a team that haven't won in 16 games, that's a full season and a few games.
Yes, a long time.
Yeah, beat them to end their winless streak. So I had to quickly bring that up before we moved on to our focus games.
And I think if you go back and look, before that UMass win, I think the last win before that UMass win was aeons ago as well. I think they've had one win in a very, very long time, which is madness. Rush Nation, we are going long today. We're not apologetic about it. Before we do, if you're still listening, thanks for checking us out. We appreciate it. This is the second to last podcast on the 5 Yard channel for a little bit. So if you're listening on that channel still, head over to 5 Yard Rush, subscribe to that. And then on Wednesdays, as normal, the podcast will drop into your feed. If you are listening on 5 Yard Rush and you are new to 5 Yard College, welcome. We appreciate you listening. It doesn't do you or us any harm to tell your friends to check us out, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You learn about players coming into fantasy for you next season. So check us out. Tell your friends to check us out. Keep listening. We appreciate it. But we're unapologetic about going long. Ash, first of our focus games, Bama, Texas A&M. This was an absolute barnstormer.
Yeah, it really was. It's a phenomenal game. And Texas A&M did everything right. They had their game plan. They knew what they needed to do, and they executed it as well as anyone could expect. This is the first time in the last since Haynes King went down hurt that they got over 300 yards on offense. And Zach Calzada, as I said, he has not looked good up until this point, those last two games. But on the day, hurt as well. Hurt in the, I want to say, I can't remember if it was the fourth quarter or the third quarter, but he got hurt and he continued to play. And he obviously led that final drive to win that, for them to score that field goal as time expired. And yeah, he was great. They game planned this game so well. The defense and special teams is what won this game for Texas. Their defense gave Bryce Young all sorts of problems for the whole game. Their specials team gave Alabama special team issues. It was just such a great game for Texas A&M all rounds. They, as I say, it's not many people that have this game plan and can execute it as well as Texas A&M did against Alabama. Jimbo Fisher got absolutely everything right. Like it's crazy, and it's probably I mean, this would have surprised almost everybody, I'd say, in the nation that Texas managed to get this victory. Apart from Jimbo Fisher.
I said it earlier. I think this is a game plan that not only nobody's seen before, but it's almost as if Jimbo Fisher drew it up from scratch.
Yeah,
this week it's very rare we see Nick Saban outcoached like this, especially by a former student, and it's because of his due diligence to the game and his knowledge that Bama are so good. And then when you get somebody who turns up with a playbook that nobody, has accredited Texas A&M with, they got them on the jump, they got them early, and Bama were chasing, and yes, they clawed Texas A&M back, but then Texas A&M sealed it at the end. And I think it's one of those things where you have to take stock and go and watch the performance because of what we've seen from Texas A&M previously this season. And you look at it and think, well, what happened? Something must. But it was just, as you said, Texas A&M were the better team on the day.
Yeah, they're definitely better team on the day, and in particular on defense and special team. I mean, they forced 2 turnovers, and one of those in the end zone. The specials team caused the punters all sort of problem. I think they blocked a punt and scored from that, possibly, or they definitely blocked a punt. But yeah, they played this game so well. They Anis Smith, Jalen Weidemeyer on the offense. Obviously, Zach Calzada, who he spoke about. Isaiah Spiller, he only finished the day with 46 yards, but they won every battle they needed to. Fourth down. What was their fourth down conversion? I'll see if I can find that.
Now I may be getting my games mixed up here, but did Texas A&M win this with a field goal?
Yeah. Field goal as time expired.
Have you seen the video of the field goals kicker's family on the sideline?
Yes, I haven't watched it, but funnily enough, as I was watching the highlights earlier, I seen it. Like, it came up briefly, but they lose their mind, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's his wife or his fiance or whoever. She definitely had a ring on her left hand. Like, she basically drops to her knees when the kick goes over, and then vaults over the sideline and just runs onto the pitch. I just don't know whether she makes it all the way or not, but
Johnny Manziel was there as well, wasn't he? Seen his I don't know if it's Instagram video or Twitter, something like that. Yeah, he was losing his mind because they rushed the field. That is, I think they got like a capacity of like 105,000, something like that. I'm pretty sure all of them were on the field. It's crazy, but I mean, well deserved. Let's be honest. Crazy.
Go on.
No. I was just going to say, speaking of Johnny Manziel, I've literally just seen as well, it's their first win in this series against Bama since Johnny Manziel beat them in 2012 on the road when Alabama were also ranked number 1.
That's mad. That's mad. I mean, we move on to our next game. This scoreline is right. Ole Miss beat Arkansas 52-51. I've not seen any of this game, but that is a significant scoreline.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I wrote down while I was watching it, I went back. These 4 games, I watched pretty much all of it. Fast forward a few bits and pieces, but 1,287 yards of total offense. Defense may as well not have been on the field. Was my comment, barring I think the last few plays where Ole Miss. So they it was a slugfest. There was no defense pretty, but JT Jefferson, quarterback for Arkansas, and Matt Corral just did what they want. They both looked phenomenal. This game changed leads 5 times in the fourth quarter. Came down to the last 2 minutes, or even the last minute 30, I think. So Ole Miss got the ball back with 1 minute 20 on the clock, 1 minute 22 on the clock, something like that. Rather than holding the ball, it was tied at 45 at this point as well, by the way. Rather than just pushing it up the field, going for a game-winning field goal, Kiffin and Corral were like, nah, not doing that. One play, 68-yard touchdown. Yeah, cool, done. 1 minute 7, shows what you can do, Arkansas. JT Jefferson was like, cool, if you can do it, I'm going to do it as well. 75-yard touchdown drive. Scored as time expired. Great play, by the way. Literally, as the buzzer went, they scored this touchdown. They could have tied it up with a field goal. With the extra point, and Arkansas head coach, I can't remember his name off the top of my head for some reason. They decided to go for 2. I think the commentators were saying at the time, tie it up, extra point, game on. Let's go to overtime. As they said that, it panned to the head coach. 2 fingers up. Let's go for 2. Terrible play call. It was like, I give them all the credit in the world for going for the 2 points. And to be honest, I probably would have done it as well. After that game, I would have just wanted to get it done. Try and win it there and then, regardless. But the actual play call itself was terrible. And you could tell instantly because the way the Ole Miss defense lined up, they were rushing the passer. The call was wrong. I think Jefferson probably should have audibled for either a timeout. I can't remember if they had any timeouts, but they should have tried to change the play somehow. Didn't, got sacked, end of the game, and obviously Ole Miss came away with the victory. But it was back and forth, end to end. Like, such a good offensive display. I would recommend going back and watching the highlights because there's some great performances. Treylon Burks is my favorite wide receiver, one of my favorite wide receivers in the college football, and this game he showed why. 2 plays in a row, Jefferson put the ball up to him on the sideline and he mossed the defender twice. Back-to-back plays. He did it once for 35 yards down to about Ole Miss's 35-yard line or 40-yard line. Very next play, literally 1 yard line, did the same again. Just bang. Yeah, I'm having that. So good. He's such a physical wide receiver that's got a burst of speed because then you see in the fourth quarter or third quarter, he's beating players with speed as well. Treylon Burks, watch out for him in the NFL draft because he's going high and wherever he lands, he's going to be a dominant NFL wide receiver, in my opinion. And this game just shows it. But yeah, crazy game. Scoreline says it all, 51-52, 2 ranked teams, no defense needed. Let's just throw and run the ball because, I've been talking about the passes, but there was also, I think, what was it, nearly 200 yards? Oh, well over. Oh, sorry, there was over 300 yards of offense for both teams as well on running offense for both teams as well. It's just a mad game. I
want to say Arkansas's head coach is Sam Hardman, something like that.
Yes. For the life of me, I can't remember what his name is. I think it is Sam Hardman or something along those lines.
It's close to that. Let's move on to the Red River Showdown. Oklahoma won 55-48 over Texas, who got out early. Xavier Worthy is a monster for Texas.
Yeah.
Sad to say I left him on my bench in the showdown, but that doesn't matter anymore.
I mean, to be fair though, he had a torrid time last week. He had multiple drops in last week's game. So,
but he bounced back in the biggest way.
If you saw last week's game, I would have understood that you benched him because he was terrible last week. But yeah, he definitely made up for it this week.
Yeah, he definitely did. This I actually saw some of this Saturday night. I had it on before I went to bed. Man alive, Mims is one hell of a wide receiver.
Yeah, it really is.
That boy's ball locating and positioning on the jump is special. I think his 3rd and 19 pass from Williams into the end zone for that touchdown is just a thing of beauty, falling inside the pylon with your foot just inside play. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, this has been spoken about as game of the season contender already, game of the year. I mean, if you go back and watch it, you could quite clearly see why.
Mm-hmm.
Largest comeback in Red River history. Oklahoma were 21 points down at I can't remember exactly when it was, but yeah, 21-point deficit. It's the largest deficit to be overcome in the Red River Showdown. Obviously, Spencer Rattler, the number 1 quarterback for 2022, as people thought at the start of the year. He was benched at the end of the first quarter, first half, I think it was. Can't remember. Yeah, first half or first quarter. Caleb Williams come in and Caleb Williams came in for a play before Rattler was benched and went for like 30-odd yards or 40-odd yards, something like that. Riley had seen enough, went, go on, Rattler, on the bench, same as last year. You can't do it in the Red River game. Get on the bench. I think he might have had the same mindset because last year he benched him. He came back and he scored like 3 touchdowns to win them the game in last year's Red River. Not quite the same this year. Caleb Williams wouldn't let him get back on the field. This was Caleb Williams until the end.
But didn't Rattler come back and throw a...
Yeah, just about to say that. Until the last drive, Rattler came back for last 2 or 3 plays, threw a pass, and then it looked like they were lining up just to go for the field goal to tie the game. And then Kennedy Brooks somehow... For whatever reason, Texas defense were not ready. Kennedy Brooks just went, big hole there. I'm going for 33 yards. Give me the ball. Touchdown. We're winning. See you later.
Yep. Direct snap. Wildcat. Kennedy Brooks. Thanks for coming. But I think because did he cross the line with a second left, or did time expire as he crossed the line?
No, there was 3 seconds left. When he crossed the line, there was a second left. But when the kick when Oklahoma kicked the kickoff, which they squibbed it, there was 3 seconds left on the clock. So it's pretty much the end of the last second.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, what a fight back by Oklahoma. What a game. Texas were 28-7 up in the first quarter. They were 14-0 up inside the first 2 minutes. They were up by 18 at half time. They were up by 21 at one point. And then, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma won this game. And I think at half time, some people probably would have turned off. A lot of Oklahoma fans thought, you know what, I can't watch Texas do us like this. I'm turning it off. Look at Twitter, go, what the hell is going on? Get it back on. And yeah, and then you mentioned him earlier on the other side of the ball, Xavier Worthy. Wow, what did he finish on? Like 260 yards and a pair of touchdowns.
Yeah,
that kid is phenomenal for a freshman, true freshman as well. We spoke about Trayvon Henderson at Ohio State. Xavier Worthy is the wide receiver equivalent of him as a true freshman this year.
And he had a monster pass reeled in, and it was heading towards the end zone, and the ball got stripped as well. We had a massive strip fumble. I mean,
that was unfortunately one of the down points of his game, and obviously turns out Texas's game. Yeah, he was maybe 3 yards away from the end zone,
but it was a big strip. It wasn't as if it was
nothing. Like, you can't take it. I mean, yes, he got stripped, but I mean I don't know. I can't remember which defender it was, but yeah, he got to him and he came behind him and stripped that ball out from him. So all the credit goes to the defender there. But I think maybe a more experienced wide receiver would have maybe turned his head. I think Xavier Worthy was like, I'm gone, no one's catching me, that's it.
Yeah.
And yeah, then unfortunately he got taken down. But apart from that, yeah, he was phenomenal on the day. And as I mentioned earlier, he was really poor last week, which you can expect from a true freshman. This is his first year in the game. But to have a game like this after last week is going to do wonders for him. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what we're going to see from him if he can continue this way.
Absolutely. And then last one, Ash, a lower scoring affair. Iowa beat Penn State 23-20.
They did indeed, yes. And this one was about the defenses, and we all expected it to be about the defenses. This was as I said earlier, Iowa, arguably the second best defense in the country at the moment, and Penn State, a top defense as well this year. And both of them dominated for this game. We mentioned earlier that Sean Clifford went down hurt, and that changed the game for Penn State. Yes, he threw 2 interceptions, and Iowa State forced the ball away from him twice. But when Clifford went, Robertson come in, and unfortunately their offense just stagnated completely. They were up 17. What were they up by when he went? They were up 17-3 at one point, and then 17-10 before Clifford went down and didn't come back. Robertson come in, and unfortunately Iowa just caused him all sorts of problems. And then Petrus on the other side of the ball was able to get enough to see them over the line. They relied on their defense. They can rely on this. Iowa can rely on this defense. They're that good. But yeah, Iowa turned the ball over 4 times, and this was a closely fought game as the scoreline entails. But I think the worthy winners here were definitely Iowa, and I'm worried for any offense that goes up against these guys. I think they can do what they did to Penn State today quite easily. I've got one question on them for you, and I've also got my answer. Are they a lock for the playoffs now? I know they're sat at number 2 at the moment and undefeated, but in your opinion, are they a lock for the playoffs?
I don't know. You'd like to think so on the state of their defense right now, but I don't know they're running. But if Bama don't lose, if Ohio State keep going, if Iowa lose, you're talking about the number 4 spot because of pollings before, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I just think if Iowa lose 1 or 2, and then you get Cincinnati, who maybe lose 1, if not lose 2.
Yeah, so
it's so difficult to. For me, I'd have Cincy over Iowa if it continues the way it is, and if if Iowa lose one, yeah, I'd like them to be in the year of madness that we're currently in. I'd love it to be the fact that Iowa are in the top 4 and make the playoffs. But what are we, 2 weeks out now from the playoff rankings starting to happen? Something like that, end of October-ish. So
for me personally, I almost want to say that they are, because I mentioned it earlier. The only way, if they lose a game, they drop out instantly. Ohio State and Bama go above them, 100%. Doesn't matter how you look at it. If Bama and Ohio State don't drop another game, and Iowa or Cincinnati do, both of those teams go above them. However, Iowa have on their schedule, they have no more ranked opponents to face, and they face the last 6 teams they have a combined record of 15 wins to 19 losses. Their schedule for the rest of the year is is Purdue, Wisconsin, which could be a tough game, Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska. I don't see them losing any of those games. So for me, I am going to say that Iowa are a lock in this, unless there is a surprise result in one of those games. They could. I mean, I think they're going to be undefeated. I think we could have 2 12-0 teams in the year, Georgia and Iowa. And if they go undefeated and miss out on the playoffs with the way they've played, I will be shocked, because Bama and Ohio State have a loss, and there should be no reason they go above Iowa unless Iowa drop a game. If Iowa drop a game, fair, yeah, that's fair enough. I would put them both above them. But if it stays as it is, which I think it will, I can't see them losing to any of those teams. Iowa are a lock for me, and they're a lock for me at 2. As much as I love Cincinnati, I think Iowa's defense is that good that I would put them above Cincinnati at this stage and probably keep them there as well.
Yeah, and hearing their schedule in the cupcake, it is Iowa's now to lose to not stay in the top 4, and the way they're playing and the way that team is rolling, I think they've got a grasp. They know now that they're there, and I think the way their defense plays, they can solidify that number 2. Okay, let's finish on this then, Ash. Kentucky beat Georgia this weekend and Iowa win. Do Iowa go to number 1 overall?
Yeah. If Iowa win and Georgia lose, I would say that Iowa will go number 1. Iowa should go number 1. If Georgia lose, Iowa should go number 1. Definitely. I still think Georgia. I think Georgia would stay second if they would they stay second if they lost to Kentucky.
I don't think they can.
I don't think they can if they did this to Bama. I don't think they can actually. No, I think no. You're probably no. I think it could be exactly what happened to Bama. I think all of those teams are below him. They could well see themselves 5th, and we could see Iowa top, Cincinnati second, Alabama 3rd, and Ohio State 4th, and Georgia 5th. On that one loss for a team now seems to be the real deciding factor for these teams. For these teams at the top, of course, you've got those undefeated teams below them that even though they're undefeated, they ain't getting close to the playoffs this year. But the rest of those teams, come on, Cincinnati, stay undefeated. Let's get them top. I'd love that. Cincinnati finish, that'd be fantastic.
Imagine that, Ash, man. This has been an absolute blast. It's just brilliant to have you back. As much as George was great company last week, I did miss you. It wasn't the same, so I'm pleased you're back. Rush Nation, as I mentioned, this is the second to last pod on the 5 Yard College channel for a little bit. If you were interested, which you should be, in checking out all the boys' articles, head over to 5yardrush.co.uk. Check out the articles there from the college. The other guys are smashing it as well, with it being Dynasty, Fantasy, IDP, DFS. Congratulations, Nick, as well. You had some good news from the family this week, so that's big time stuff. Rush Nation, Ash is back, and I think he's back next week as well, so he isn't disappearing. He has asked me if I'd do him a favour this week, and that's fine. I will do that. He's got his Steelers hat on.
Saved it till the end, didn't I?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's the NFL, man. We've both taken our lumps with that at the moment. College is the way forward.
Oh, it definitely is.
It's all go here at 5 Yard College. It's been a pleasure, my friend. Listen, Rush Nation, 6 weeks in is absolute madness, and that is because Saturdays are for rushing too.